Life is a marathon, not a sprint. And so it's 2020. So we're going to talk 2020 running New York so much with my friend, Kathy Kass. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
You are what I think of as a quintessential New York character. There's so many types of only possible in New York characters, but I just learned that you studied in Amsterdam for your LLM. So I'm so curious about that experience. Didn't know that about you till we said we
Yeah,
would
it
interview.
was about 10 years after becoming a lawyer, and I was just tired of the typical scene, and I really did want to work internationally. So I went to, it was really before the internet, so I went to the public library and went through book after book to see what schools in Europe had an international LLM program taught in kind of English and what was available. And I found there was a program in Florence and there was a program in Amsterdam, and I went to Amsterdam.
Fantastic. And I only learned by what an LLM is by a chance meeting in college, and coincidentally in EPS we had an inquiry today from a Parviz wondering about international lawyers or internationally trained lawyers in EPS. So if you could share a bit what the LLM is and what the international law career opportunities are out there for young people.
Um, I'm not, I mean, I think there's plenty of opportunities. It happened that when I finished was the middle of a recession. So I had a lot of jobs potentially lined up, but they didn't happen. The international, the Brussels, the London, those kind of jobs. The program itself was attorneys. It was law. There was a sister, program for like masters, non-law, and a lot of it was about competition and trademarks and international business. And we had to take business French, and I was even at that point when I could go into a French library and read a French thesis and kind of understand it. I can't
And I
anymore.
And I audited a law school class in college, China and international public law, and that was a world that I don't think gets much coverage. But this idea of international private law and international public law, and it's very different than what would be domestic in any given country.
Yeah, that's the civil law is most of Europe, and I forgot what the word is, but it's like the kind of law that we have in England and US. Um, it's case law, and but it was really funny because we had about 50, 60 different nationalities in the classes, and the teachers were Dutch, but they were teaching. We said that they taught in Dinglish because because it was like every now and then the words that would come out, like justice and the judicial.
Ah, I've been on so many KLM flights where I feel like it's perfectly fun and great to use your native tongue, but I wonder if there's a single person on the flight that understands Dutch and doesn't understand the English announcements. It seems like they often have better English than the average American on the street.
Yeah, I mean, I know a little bit of Dutch. I can tell when someone's speaking Dutch as opposed to German, which
Hmm.
isn't what most Americans can't tell the difference. Um, but I think they still like it if you can speak a few words, like any like
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah,
but
and the food is in Netherlands is more distinctive than I would have assumed, and more of my dining has been based around the airline than the limited time I've spent in the country. But speak about the Dutch food culture.
well, it was interesting because I was a vegetarian when I first went, and we're
Mm.
primarily a vegetarian, and I gave it up because all they would serve was, this was the 90s. It wasn't like now.
Mhm.
They would serve meat and two servings of potato. That's basically their idea of a balanced meal. So, so at one point, one night, I just said, "Okay, this is it," and I picked this like French restaurant, and I went out and had like a Chateaubriand, and it was absolutely delicious. I came home, got totally sick, and I've never been a vegetarian since.
Ah. What made you a vegetarian then to begin with, and how did I'm curious how how you're an athlete, so how your body adjusted between the two
It was
different.
only it was, I don't know, a year or so. It was just, I think at the time I had been dating someone who was vegetarian, and he
Mm,
just hated the thought of meat, and I just got into the whole idea, and it didn't last long. So
nice.
I mean, I eat red meat, but I primarily like fish and vegetables. So,
I see.
so
Okay. And let's head to your athlete lifestyle. So I earlier this year had an opportunity to tag along to a marathon in Antarctica, and showing how little I knew about long distance running, I asked some people, and I said, is it even conceptually possible to train? And I think it was like 3 weeks before that I knew about it, to run a marathon if you've never run any distance
did you
before. And they said that's usually when the training is winding down and you're getting ready for the race. So I started a bit of learning, and I decided I was just going to follow along, and as a
did you do
spectator.
it?
No, no, I mean, those 3 weeks, 2 weeks were a designated eating trip in Hong Kong for the year.
Oh,
So I knew there was just no way I was going to try, but I did get to tag along and watch, and it was, I think what the winds were almost 30 meters a second, blowing drifts of snow on some people that had never even seen the snow in conditions. So that these incredible athletes, there was over 30 of them, men and women, all ages from teenager to in their 60s, and everybody was able to complete it. They had to extend the time a little bit to like 6.5 hours for one. But I mean, you're running into 30 meters a second. I mean, it was, some of them were going backwards. It was so
there was one year that they couldn't let them off the boat because of the weather, and they ran the marathon on the boat.
Oh, really? So that would have been on the peninsula. This particular race was in Queen Maud Land inland. So there was the fly in and get ready on the plane. But marathons, how many have you run? Where have you run them?
I've done 113.
Oh,
I did all 50 states. I finished that in 2012 in a very rainy New Hampshire race. I've done some international. I've done a marathon in Kyoto. I've done a marathon in I did a half in Luxembourg, half in Rio, a full marathon in Barcelona, in Paris, in Panama, Montreal. So
and talk about this circuit of marathons. I mean, we don't know what things are going to shake out or how they'll change, but this calendar, what are the desirable races in terms of, I think we know some of the most famous in the world for headlines, but I'm curious about, as somebody with a tourist bent, which are the ones that are the most scenic or you think most special to you
yeah.
personally for the experience?
Well, first of all, you have to understand. I mean, when I started out, I was more serious about doing the training right and doing this. And then I just got more into the experience and going a place and sometimes putting a race together in 6 weeks' time, or for quite a few years doing one marathon a month. And
Mm-hmm.
you can't be about going really fast when you're doing that. You've got sometimes you're just about the enjoyment and the people and the travel.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it came. So I never really wanted to do the really fast marathons. I never did. Some of the most famous ones are Berlin, Tokyo, well, New York, which I've done. Boston, I've done as a volunteer, not volunteer, charitable. Chicago, ones
Uh-huh.
like that. Let's see. I like instead of doing Tokyo, I did Kyoto the week before. There were about two people that spoke English, and it was like the coolest thing. I mean, they had like the monks out screaming and chanting, it, and you went through like, I don't know if it was like, 10 or more UNESCO sites as you were running.
Mm.
It was amazing. So
So that, let's say somebody, they want, again, we'll assume schedule resumes more or less as it was. Let's say their goal is the Kyoto Marathon in 2 years, and they're a fit person, but they've never certainly run a long distance like this. What would that, is 2 years reasonable? Is 1 year possible? What would
oh,
that whole process look
put
like?
things together in 6 weeks. I've just you know, I'd have an injury and I'd be like, okay, you're going to do it. If it means I walk it, I walk it, especially if I've already paid for it and then not doing refunds. So I've done New York City 18 times.
Hmm.
That's, although this year is crazy because everything's canceled, as you know.
Yeah. But somebody that has never trained for one of these and wants to train in that, what would that whole
What would it
process look
be?
like? Going from zero to hero, so to speak.
Um, they usually don't go from zero. They usually go, it's like they got psyched and maybe they did a half marathon.
Uh-huh.
And then they said, I want to do a marathon now. Right.
Okay.
And from there, I mean, then they get really neurotic and they download every plan and they take every class and you usually do a schedule where, let's say, one day a week on Saturday you do your long run that might start off as 8 miles and the next week it might be 10 miles and the next week it might be 12, and the goal is to get your long run up to 20 miles
Okay.
because once you've gotten there then you could do a marathon, and then during the week you would be doing, let's say, 6 miles a few days a week and maybe cross training or resting one of
Hmm.
the other days. And it's like people, I mean, at my level, I would get up to 40 miles a week, but the fast, real people, they could do, 60 and 80 miles. I never had, I would get injured if I did that much. So,
Oh, that's incredible. So we've made it to Kyoto, and I want to hear more about this incredibly beautiful circuit of passing UNESCO sites as running by. What does that feel like? What do you observe that us regular everyday tourists don't?
it was pretty incredible. I mean, it just, first of all, of course, I stayed at the Hyatt Regency. And so, I mean, let's talk about the Hyatt for a second. The Hyatt Regency there, they they greeted me with like open arms, so they knew I was running the marathon. And the general manager decided that when I finished, oh, the first thing they did was hire cars for me the whole time. They picked me up at Osaka Airport, and then the next day it was snowy because it was February. And they
Mhm.
said, "Well, we've hired a driver to take you to the expo to pick up your running things." I'm like, "Okay." And then the next morning, they say, "Well, we hired a car to take you to the start of the marathon." And Japanese, you can't really say no when they're how they are.
Yeah.
So, okay. So then after I finished the marathon, I got back to the hotel. They say, "Well, get ready. The massage person's going to come escort you down to the spa for a massage." Okay, so then they bring me downstairs for a massage, and then the general manager says, um, "Get ready. I'm taking you to dinner at 8 o'clock or whatever." And he took me to this unbelievable, you know, sushi omakase kind of restaurant. So so this is why I run marathons, because it's so much fun, right? So the next morning I was leaving because I was going to the train station to go to Tokyo. So this is funny. They come to me and they say, "Well, we want to take care of your taxi." And at
Mhm.
this point, I knew, I can't even say no. I'm like, "Okay, thank you. I'm glad I brought chocolate for everyone and like gifts ahead of time." Um, so I get to the train station and I see one of the women who works the front desk right there, and I'm like, "What are you doing here?" She said, "Well, they put me in a taxi right behind you to come to the train station to make sure you got on the train." So yeah. So the marathon was fun. It was one cultural issue.
Uh-huh.
The 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 long lines of bathrooms, the porta-sands before marathons, 'cause
Uh-huh.
everybody runs in the bathroom. The men's had no doors on them.
Mm.
It was a little odd. And I saw the same thing in Tokyo. So, but the marathon itself, it was a rainy day, and there were like two football fields, and we were in different um, carols. So we just ran from there, and then I don't know, it just went by. That the really cool stuff were like them serving like you know like all kinds of red bean treats instead of
Mhm.
power bars and stuff.
Mhm. Mm-hmm.
And the monks out cheering with the signs. That was really cool. I'm seeing some sign here. Can I just Google what's done? Okay. I don't know if something is coming on there. I Is there something blocking the view, or it's just on my side?
No, you were absolutely perfect. So it
Okay.
doesn't pop in. So.
Okay.
Now, how are you getting this one? I mean, there's Japanese hospitality that's across the board, but there's also specific about Hyatt. So talk about as a lead into the travel hacker piece, why you're getting such wonderful treatment at Hyatt. And it's probably not spending $50,000 a year at their hotels.
Um, I I think if you're a nice person, usually people are nice back. And that's part of it. If I do have a gripe, I try to keep it private. I mean, I know a lot of bloggers, they get all their views because they could talk about the horrible things that happen.
Hmm.
I, I really would prefer not to talk about all the horrible stories and try to I don't know. People have just been nice to me. I mean,
Why?
I
Why?
am a blogger, but it's not like I'm I'm not a famous blogger.
Well, I was thinking more around the why, for people that aren't as familiar with the points. Why Hyatt specifically? What's the appeal? How is it feasible to get the? I would assume your globalist status.
Yes, yes. Why is it? There is nothing like Hyatt. I started off with a free year of Hyatt Diamond when I went on a Star Megadoo trip. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if I mentioned it to you, but I had won a trip from Brian, the points guy, in like
Mm-hmm.
2011 or
Mm-hmm.
2012.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat in first class in 1A and 1B with him.
Mm-hmm.
And that trip began with everybody that was on that trip became Diamond.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my introduction. And at the time, it was easier because you only needed 25 stays as opposed to 60 nights.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, what people used to do, because it was about stays, they used to go to some place where there were, three Hyatts and then go Monday night at one, Tuesday night at the other, Wednesday night at the other.
Mm-hmm.
It, and I don't know, this some of the hotels are not that expensive, and you could gather point. It's easier. Hyatt makes it easy because it's a transfer partner of Chase. You can get points via Chase, Sapphire, and um, it just and then once you start, I think that once you're elite with Hyatt, there's nothing better.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're mid level is fine with Hilton and Marriott. But when you're at the higher level, the treatment is nice. The late, I mean, even let's say as a marathoner,
Mm-hmm.
having a late checkout when you're a slower runner,
Mm-hmm.
4 o'clock, is it's amazing. It's so much better than either having to leave your bags downstairs or something like that. That's amazing. I mean, the treatment that you get when if I would run marathons and I'd plan it out. Um, the key with there was a lot of keys about planning for running marathons if you
Uh-huh.
knew that you wanted to run, and that if you wait till everybody realizes there's going to be a marathon a year from September or a year from next June, rates all the good rates will disappear, the government rate will
Okay.
disappear, this or that. But if you book something long in advance, sometimes you could get the earlier rate and lock that in
Mm-hmm.
without being a non-refundable. So because I am a government employee, so I really was entitled to use that rate.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, we'll put that out there. Some people use rates which they're not entitled, and that incurs risk. That you're
Right.
using rates.
I take the fifth.
Yeah. In this case, you're using rate to which you are entitled. And thank you for your public service.
Thank God they're letting me work from home right now, but yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned the 4 o'clock checkout, and that's something that at the top tier both what Hyatt and Marriott offer, while the other major programs are late checkout where available, which
Right.
means
Well,
like when you need it, it's not available, right?
it's late checkout. It's breakfast included. It's of course Wi-Fi. It's they used to have an automatic amenity. Now they don't have that. But if you have status, a lot of times they'll treat you. You'll see a bottle of wine in your room, or a or a plate of fruit or something like that.
Mm.
Getting lounge access is incredible.
Mm.
Some hotels, especially outside the U.S., have lounges that are amazing with food and drink and breakfast and middle of the day. And I found that, I mean, I know when I travel with my boyfriend, he loves the whole lounge life. But when I travel by myself, especially when I would do a trip, halfway around the world to Hong
Mhm.
Kong or something,
Mhm.
I was, that was it. I would have some appetizers and that's time to go to sleep. So it was so nice if you're solo not to have to go looking for a restaurant, and you could have the meal in a place where you feel comfortable.
Mhm. Mhm. Oh, fantastic. And you said was it over 130 different marathons?
113,
13.
but
So
these days I'm walking them. I just the knee said goodbye, so I still like I still I think I'm probably done doing full marathons, but I still walk every day. I still walk anywhere between 4 and 10 miles every
oh,
day.
wow. So talk us about your walking route. I mean, you live, say, somewhere in Manhattan, and there's a lot of routes. Is it the same route? Is it you change it up, or have you crisscrossed every street in Manhattan?
Well, first of all, now that we're in pandemic mode, it's everything's somewhat closer. When the whole thing started, my building has a rooftop,
Mm-hmm.
and especially my boyfriend was totally paranoid. He wouldn't even leave the building, so
Mm.
he'd go up to the rooftop and walk and or run. I
Mm.
would go up there. It was very funny because I would have a GPS Strava that would just show me going. I figured out it was about 30 to 32 times around the rooftop for a mile. So I would just have this like little orange circle. So that was number one. But the rooftop closed for renovations. The main places where I go are by the East River and by Charles Schurz Park and along the East River near Gracie Mansion. That's one route. Um, and the other one is Central Park.
Mm. In Central Park, I've certainly about any visitor to New York has heard of it and maybe is unaware of how large it is. There's little spots you can dip in and out, but there's you can.
Oh, it's amazing. Um, the if you go around the park drive, it's 6 miles or 6.2 miles.
Mm.
But there's a reservoir in there which is pretty famous. That's 1.6 miles around. There's a lot of nooks and crannies. There's even parts that I didn't never went in. Not so much for running, but like hiking. There's like trails that are really country trails up at the north end of the park. And there's also this area called Conservatory Gardens, which has all like beautiful English gardens.
Mm.
Central Park is amazing. It's. I always said it was my sanity and my backyard because I don't have. So maybe
Uh,
next.
to tell us about a day hiking, which you said it's in the north. Which are the entry exit points you would take?
I've only done that once. I really so when you're above 102nd Street, there's just any entrance into there. And the park goes at that point, let's say from 102nd Street to 110th.
Mhm.
And it's from like Fifth Avenue to like Central Park West, maybe that's 7th Avenue. So it's I don't know the exact how far it is, but you walking on trails and it's beautiful. There's
Mm.
foliage and there's you know lakes and there's a lot to see there.
Mm.
So I like it.
And everybody in New York is a hyper local place. Yeah. You're a veteran of the points meetups that we had when I was living in New York, and even people would say, "Oh, you could make it more convenient. I don't want to go from the west side to the east side, which is actually just a few blocks in the city, but it's a world away." So beyond Central
I
Park.
always felt like a Metro card was my car, so I could go anywhere. So,
So
of course, I haven't been in a subway in 4 months, and I don't miss it at all. So,
so tell us about a neighborhood or so that either it's your own neighborhood or one that you particularly love to be in.
huh? New York. Huh. I guess I like the Village a lot. Down in the East Village is nice and it's funky and interesting. But I would sooner say Singapore or Hong Kong or all the places I've been to a little and want to go back and want to go exploring more. So, I'm, after COVID here, I'm not feeling the love for New York. I'm feeling the support for New York strong and New York tough and what we've been through here,
Mm-hmm.
but the love and the need to feel that I need to stay here. Uh, I would like to go somewhere where I could have a yacht or a terrace and a little more time to, space to walk or
Nice.
be or get in car or go to a supermarket.
It's true. When I lived in Asia, I missed pure American suburban life for that contrast and that relative ease and convenience. It's
Yeah.
all a change of pace. Let's talk about your travels. So it's you mentioned two cities as two of your favorites. So are you a city traveler? What's your style?
I am a city traveler primarily because I don't have a car usually. So,
Mm.
and I'm still exploring. I mean, when it comes to places like Greek islands, then I'm not a city person. I might be an island person. But in, let's say, last year, I was in Copenhagen for Thanksgiving. I was in Singapore for basically a mileage run. Um, I was in Auckland a year ago today, and Auckland and Singapore. Sorry, no, Auckland and Melbourne and Sydney. Um, a lot of my trips are short because I work, and so it's like getting back. But so many places I want to go back to and explore more. I like Mexico a lot. I definitely want to spend more time there.
Fantastic. What are some of the destinations in Mexico you've been to?
Of course, I've been to Playa del Carmen and I, I've been to Cancun, and I'm not a Cancun fan.
Mm.
I've been to Mexico City a few times. I'd really like to explore Merida and Guadalajara and Oaxaca. So
Tell me about Merida. That's
I haven't been there yet. I had reservations this summer, I could give you a long list of places I was supposed to go, but
that's what I'm asking. I know nothing about it.
I keep hearing from people that it's a livable, retirable kind of place, and I'm not sure I could convince Dave to go somewhere as far as that. Maybe Florida might be his limit, but I would think it'd be really cool to go to a place like Merida. It's everybody I meet like loves it. So
Fantastic. And one that you have been to a lot. You mentioned the Greek islands, and you've got one you've been to 20 times, and I've been none. So
oh yeah, it was I think uh, God Save the Points or whatever. He was writing today about Santorini. It's like funny. I've been to Mykonos 20 times, but I've never been to Santorini.
ah,
Um, so Mykonos, I went to the first time because I wanted to go to the Greek islands, and it was somehow I just kept going back. There was a community of friends. I have friends from around the world, and as much as I wish that they would say next year, let's meet at, this island, Naxos or Paros, or they would always meet at the same place. And many of them moved there, got houses, and I could land in Mykonos or even in Athens and sometimes know more people than I would if I landed in a plane in New York.
hmm,
So it was always just like it became a part of you. You know how
mhm,
different trips and different groups become part of you.
sure. Yeah.
So it did. I kind of stopped going there. It got overly expensive, overly touristic, many of those things. So
Mm.
I went back 2 years ago, but I still have a lot of friends from there. So
Oh, excellent. And what you're hanging out with friends, or what is the scenery? What is the you're in a village, you're in a beach. Again, I've only heard the name and people love it, so I don't know beyond that.
in Mykonos,
Yeah.
Um, in Mykonos, most people stay in town and go out to the beach.
Hmm.
So because it was a big happening social life. So you go to the beach during the day. You wake up, whatever time you wake up, and you make your way to the beach. And I was one of the only people who would run to the beach in like 100-degree weather. And then they'd hang out on the beach and have a few beers or whatever they have on the beach, and then they'd come back, take a siesta, and then go out and party all night, go out for dinner, and then it was definitely a party scene.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I've not been much of a partier ever in my life, so
Yeah, I'm not.
that's
I'm
probably why I haven't been there.
I'm not much of that anymore. So that's lifestyle change. So it's okay. I remember at 4 in the morning I'd be leaving, a club, and my friends are going like, "Why are you leaving?" I'm like, you know what? At 4 a.m. you tell me why you're staying. I don't have to tell you why I'm leaving. So
Oh, fantastic. And you mentioned Hong Kong and Singapore, so you
actually, both of those were mileage ones. They were both
mm,
times when Americans said, "We'll give you X status if you go X many miles,"
mm,
and I did it. And both of them, so both, well, the Hong Kong was a really short trip. It was,
mhm,
I don't know, maybe 2 nights in the hotel, so maybe 2 nights getting there,
uh-huh.
etc. And I only went to Kowloon. I didn't even get to the but I stayed at the Hyatt. That's a given. Um, I really liked it there. I went. There was a tour guide who I met who was staying. She was in my lounge, so I met her, and I said, if you only had a day, where would you go? And she said I would. She steered me towards the nunnery, and um, it was like gardens, and it was like the most beautiful place. So there's a lot, and like then I'd see like the different parks because whenever I travel in the morning, I always go running and explore what's around. So I would either see the parks or I would see the water near where you could see Victoria there. I think I don't know all the
Mm,
so it was just beautiful. And Singapore was in November. Um, that's when I think there was the deal from Hyatt where you could become executive platinum on American as a globalist, and you only had to do, I forgot, it was like 12,000 miles and X amount of money. And I found that if I flew on Finnair, it cost about $3,000 instead of 5,000.
mm,
They the way that they calculate the money is based on the miles when it's a foreign partner. Um, and of course, I had to spend like 10 hours in Helsinki airport on the way there. Um, and I didn't even go into Helsinki. I'd been there a year before, so I was like, I'm not going. So let's see. So and I went to Singapore, and actually it turned out that a friend of mine who's also a blogger, when I told her I was going, she was going to be in Japan at the same time, so she took off and met me in Singapore. So I actually it wasn't a solo trip, and we went on a I always like to go on a walking tour, so
mhm.
we did a walking tour. And of course we went, I'm going to forget all the names of the sites, but the gardens, at the sands, they were crazy. Those big structures.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've not been there since they were created. But,
So that, I mean, I did a lot of touring. I did get to see a lot of Singapore. I saw, the the Indian area, the Muslim area. I did
mm.
walking around. I really liked it. I definitely would like to go back.
You want to perhaps leave New York life behind, but you're drawn to the dense city still.
It's funny because, well, yeah, I mean, I've been to Kuala Lumpur and Bangkok, but I didn't spend enough time at those bigger cities that I felt like I needed even more time at. Singapore didn't feel like such a big city. It's like
Mm,
I also like the fact that the hotel that I was at, the Hyatt, was walking distance from the park that was there, and they had the orchid gardens. It was just beautiful.
Mm, excellent. And you work full time, as we've said. You're into points and you blog. And I'm curious, during this period, how are you allocating your time to points? Are you tuning it out? You don't have travel planned, and you're putting the hobby on hold, or are you still reading every blog? What I personally myself,
I,
I'm trying to reduce my consumption with limited success.
when it first started, I thought I could just put off trips. I thought, okay, I could put off the trip in February until May, and then I could put off May until August, and I keep doing that, and like everything's getting canceled. So I really, even though I'm not going to work, I find I'm much more consumed by work than
Mhm.
really my putting in time to blog. I've only recently tried to push myself to do it more, and it's more about the experiences that I've been going through
Mhm.
than about real travel. I mean,
Mm.
I've so many trips were canceled, and at a certain point, you go like, "What am I going to do?"
Mhm.
So, I think things are whole. I mean, at first, when travel stopped, canceled everything, a lot of people started just writing about COVID,
Mhm.
and I felt like they were just writing for the hell of it. But I realized that these are bloggers whose livelihood depend on blogging. You
Mhm.
know, I do have the day job, so I do have the luxury to not blog for a little while.
Mhm.
Um, so no, I guess I've backed off somewhat, and I still want to start again. I have a trip that I had originally. There was a mistake fare that I booked,
Mhm.
and it was a what was it? Like $600
Mhm.
starting in Budapest
Mm.
to the US, and I was able to do it Budapest to Honolulu,
Mm.
Honolulu back to New York, and then
Mhm.
6 months later, New York back to Europe. So I would have to still get a flight to Europe to begin and a flight home from Europe at the end.
Mhm.
But this was a Delta. I don't know. I don't want to say mistake, but a Delta deal,
Mhm.
and it was all business. And I booked it in March for June, thinking, of course it's going to be, of course we can travel then, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So, and it was a refundable ticket too, and a changeable ticket. So like I guess in June, I contacted Delta and I tried to make it simple because you don't want to be complicated with an agent.
Mhm.
So I just said, all I want to do is move every flight 5 months.
Mhm.
So instead of July 1 being Budapest to Honolulu, let's do it December 1. And then Honolulu back to New York, let's do it December 5th. And then the trip back to Budapest or whatever, April 15th or April 25th.
Mhm.
And they said fine, and they rebooked it all.
Ah.
But am I really going to be able to get to Europe by Thanksgiving? I don't know. So that's why I haven't been booking everything else, because I've got this one big trip in the air that I'm still wondering what's going to happen. So maybe I'll keep pushing it off.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I've got one trip that's still on the books for late November, Hong Kong, which is not at all looking like it could happen. But just leaving it in place,
I
and
know.
we'll see. But I can't get enthusiastic about booking anything new. You mentioned blogging, and as somebody who's not full time at it, one thing I've respected you in particular is your ability to make connections within the industry. And I'm thinking even gosh, it was 6, 7 years ago, I happened to have a lot of business travel in my job, and so I was staying a lot in these promotions with IHG, and so they invited me just as a customer to this dinner of frequent guests at the James Beard House in New
I was
York.
there.
Well, that's the point. And so I thought it was entirely just for people who happen to be spending a fair amount of money at the IHG, and I come into the room and suddenly there's
There I am.
a blogger I know, and I've been thinking to this day, how on earth, because there weren't other bloggers there, and so how did you get connected to the people, and how did you get this invite for this incredible dinner?
I just think that there was one of the people who worked for IHG who liked me and occasionally invited me to media events, and that's how I got invited. I was like, oh my God, it was the most amazing dinner. That was so incredible.
Yeah, and it made me rue that when we moved from Manhattan over to Jersey City, the space of, what, I don't know, just over a mile, I had Delta Diamond status. And when I was in Manhattan, it would always be like, would you like to come to this whiskey tasting for our valued diamond customers and that? And I was always out of town. I never got to a single event they invited me. Then my zip code changed to, instead of starting with a 1, it started with a 0. And for 5 years, not a single thing from Delta. It was like,
Oh.
you moved to Jersey City, you've dropped off the map as a customer.
Jersey City is nice, though. I love Jersey.
It's a wonderful space. But yeah, it was like, I met some Delta people, and I joked about how you guys need to do your zip codes a little bit different, because I still work at this. I should change it to my office address, because
I only got invited to mainly Hyatt things, a few IHG. Sometimes it's a matter of who knows who and talking, and there's other bloggers who may not be loyal. They may not be point bloggers, but they may be travel bloggers, and they might know something. But I miss all that. I really do. I like the parties. I do.
Those travel massives and that, and
all of them, yeah.
Free drinks from some tourism bureau. So some people that may start a blog someday are the first one in with double fisting the drinks, and there's no networking for them. But then there's some other very interesting and industry people, and so yeah, it's a great scene.
Yeah, I like a lot of it. The things I really can't do, like the media trips and a lot of that a lot of bloggers jump up and down for, because again, I have a full-time job. I have been on a few media trips. I went to Ecuador and I went to Quebec, but mainly I just do my own trips.
And since you do know some of the non-points bloggers, points bloggers are very resourceful in earning points and seem to be very narrowly focused, or not even willing to experiment so much with different monetization and different methods to make their blogs grow. And it's always a bit of a puzzle to me. If you go to these blogger type conferences, there's people trying all different kinds of things, and the points bloggers, it's like, can I get credit card links, or don't, or if I don't have enough traffic, I just want to try to get to the point where I have credit card links. And yes, they're lucrative, but they're also very hard to get. So
I have credit card links. I don't have enough time to spend to really push the monetization part. So I always put the link on my blog, but the only person who ever uses my links is me.
Yeah. So I think you're in violation of the terms, so you probably should say you're using the links to refer friends. And
no, I mean, occasionally somebody will use it, but I don't spend a lot of time saying, okay. I mean, I don't say, okay, right now United has 2 good deals. They went up to 100,000 points. They did this. I just feel like it's boring. I feel like just to write about that is boring. And the other day I wrote about something because an offer popped up on Marriott website that was pretty good, but everybody, the people who are snobby about points were like, well, if you value a point at this and you value a point at this, how could you say this is better? Like, well, I don't value them the same way as you do, or maybe I don't want to spend $3,000 right now. As someone who uses Marriott for extra stays, not for my mainstay, but mileage people can be very rude.
I think so I'm curious, what have you learned from non-mileage bloggers that the points bloggers should absorb and should do, whether it's monetization or other practices? Because there's also this element of points bloggers that's like, I need 100 posts a day almost. I mean, the points guy, what do they average? 30. I mean, they've got a team of 100
that's their
people.
business.
But even
and we know what they are.
But even independent ones, I've heard a lot of the independent bloggers say, if you can't get up to 3 posts a day. You just don't stand a chance in this area. And yet the traditional travel bloggers, if you can call them that, they're like 2 posts a month, but then they get traffic by promoting the heck out of it in a very different model. So I'm curious what you've picked up from them that the points crowd could absorb.
I'm not sure. I just follow my own. I just my own drummer. I go with if I want to write about something, I write about it. I wish I had more time, and I really do think that one of these days, if I leave my job, maybe I will devote myself full time to blogging. And I like the people. I like.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of it for me, the blogging isn't necessarily just making money from it because I don't. Um, I make a little. My accountant, says, well, you can deduct this, you can't deduct that. It's not quite a hobby horse, but it's not. Um, but what I really like is meeting new people, the whole new angle of you meet somebody, and it's a little different when because you're talking from a media perspective, and you get to meet people and talk to people in a different way than if you were just traveling.
Mm-hmm.
It's it it's not that it opens doors, but it just opens my eyes a lot. So I like that I have this experience.
Fantastic. And another thing I've learned about you, and we'll close with she's floored. So you have an interest in carpets and flooring. I've shared the account, Instagram, and it's different than just about any Instagram account I've seen. So tell us about this.
It's a hobby. I haven't pushed it. I don't have a lot of followers. Yes, please follow She's Floored, SHESFLOORED. It's just when you go to different hotels and they have beautiful carpets, and so I would take a picture at this one and take a picture at that one, and one day I just started posting pictures of mainly hotel carpets. Mm-hmm. And it looks really cool, especially all together. And every time I look at a carpet, I remember the hotel. And it especially works really great with casinos because casinos have the most amazing carpets. And I hate casinos. So it's really great when I could say, oh, well, the carpet at Hard Rock looked like this and the carpet at Resort looked like that, because I'm not really going there to gamble. And but I like the carpets.
Which casino carpet is the most memorable that we should seek out, even if we hate casinos?
Casino carpets are incredible. If you just look it up. I mean, look up Caesars. Well, Caesars always looks like Caesars, but they have some of the most beautiful carpets.
And that's actually partly why I do not like Singapore Airport, which I could admit on many objective measures is incredible, but one of the aspects is those carpets make me think of casinos, and so that makes me think the place is depressing. And especially because Singapore, I'm usually seem to be connecting at like 4 a.m. when it's the twilight lighting mode, and I just feel like I'm in this endless casino that I don't want to be in. And so the carpet that triggers me.
Have you been to the Jewel?
No, it's been some years now, probably 4 or 5 years since I've been through Singapore at all, and over a decade since I properly visited. So,
well, you lived in Europe, but you lived in China for a while, right?
Yeah, but I mean, you're talking 5-6 hour trip, and yeah, I mean, we went for one visit. We had our worst fight ever on New Year's Eve in the Singapore heat, and so our relationship has never reached the point that we want to go back yet. So. And the fight, I can only blame on the hotel, nothing to do with Singapore. Just things, it's triggered enough in our memory that we need to rebuild the thing. But actually, my wife went to Singapore to take her SAT. It was the nearest place to Shanghai that there was an open SAT slot, like within 6 months, because we didn't plan ahead.
I've never been to Shanghai, but I have. In 1999, I went on an adoption trip. My sister's adopted her daughter in China. So that was Beijing, Changsha, Guangzhou, and then the train to Hong Kong, and then the flight home from Hong Kong.
Yeah, that Guangzhou consulate is, of course, where all the immigration visas are processed. Incredible location on Shamian Island.
Yeah, what's the name of that the big hotel there that everyone
Like
goes?
was it the White Swan or something
Yeah,
like that? Yeah.
yeah. It was really funny because you'd see all these like aging white people running around after little Chinese babies. But everything was wonderful. I mean, my niece just graduated from college, so she's
Oh,
wonderful.
fantastic. Congrats to her, and
Yeah.
thank you for joining us tonight.